Okay, wow. I'm not very good at reading this. Okay, the first question is, the U.S. government accused the PRC of stealing our IP. Question, does the U.S.
Joe, that's my question. I'd like to eradicate that and ask another question.
That's Congressman Honda.
Number one, thank you very much for your presentation. I want to thank our hosts for doing that, and Mr. and Mrs. Dow. You are wrong, because in this country you're supposed to be considered innocent, and they have to prove that you're guilty rather than the other way around. So, and don't give up, and don't even think about suicide. You can't let the bastards win. All right? So just hang in there, and it's easy for me to say because I'm not going through what you are, but I can sense that sense of powerlessness. I wanted to make one point. The speakers have all achieved some level of accomplishments because of your degrees and your knowledge in certain areas. To be a politician, a policymaker, a congressman or congresswoman, a senator, or president, you don't need any qualifications. You just have to be 25 years old and a U.S. citizen. That's it. No other qualifications. Number two, you all are right, but how do we educate and bring about some sense of knowledge and a shame for lack of knowledge in creating policies that just pit people against each other, and it's dangerous. And so I think that there's ways to organize our community and the academic community to put some pressure on policymakers and show them how ignorant they are. And just like to get a response for that, because I think that it's time to be more bold from the community and from the academic community. Thank you.
Anybody want to take a crack at that?
Let me just say something real quick. This is a way of advertising. We have a new center. It's one of the newest centers at Stanford, the Stanford Center on China's Economy and Institutions. And if you go to our website, it's Sky at Stanford. But what there's a part of the website that's called our Impact site. And what we do is every 2 weeks, it's completely free, we get an academic paper that's written about China or about U.S.-China relations or about China's relations with the rest of the world, and we translate it into a 400 to 600 word brief. And our idea is this, and I completely agree. If you go to Washington, D.C., or, almost, any place in the world, basically what you do is you get two sources of information about China and about Asian American. You get the ideologues on social media, or you get the news. And of course, reporters want to report bad news, and that's what you hear. And so what we do is take these papers, and we've now done 64 of them over the last 3 years. It's every 2 weeks. And these papers, 33% of them, not by count, says, you know what you know about China? It's not true. This is what the data say. 33% of them say, you know what you hear about China? It's actually true. And then there's 33% of them that are like FYI, for your information only. Every time a policy brief comes out that says, China is not as bad as you think, I get 50 emails that say, why are you a panda hugger? Of course, the other side is, when it says China has this problem or this, I thought you wanted good relations between China and the U.S. Why are you condemning us? And I say, I have an email that I send right back, which it's the data. That's what the data say. But I think our problem is we just don't understand, and we don't have these sources of information, and it's all it's ideologues and reporters, and I think that that's where we're having our problems.
Okay, anybody else want to take a crack at that? If not, I'll go to the next question. To both Peter Z. and Scott, how do you convince Congress of the wisdom of nurturing international collaboration? How can we convince them that we should staple a green card to all advanced degree?
Anybody who gets an advanced degree.
Right.
Glad you asked that, because a colleague of mine at Stanford has worked on this for years with some members of Congress that he knows. There's an act called the Keep STEM Talent Act that was introduced the first time. I think it was even bipartisan, the support for it, in the House. And it never got to it was never adopted. And I think it's been attempted 4 or 5 times, and somehow it never gets to the finish line. But something like that would, in many areas of STEM fields, someone with an advanced degree would be on a track to get residency, and their immediate family members as well. And I think that kind of reform would make a big difference, because there's this barrier, and what can one do about it? It's going to take a change in immigration policy. And there have been attempts in Congress, even bipartisan, to do that, but it never gets to the finish line.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I mean, I think that that's what we need, and I mean, the loss that comes with not doing that is, I mean, read my paper, which has nothing. It's what people in the literature have shown, and it's that the United States has benefited tremendously from this, and I think we need to keep doing it, especially in this time of the world.
Peter Z.
I'm just a lawyer. I'm not I'm looking at this through the pinhole. You know, when someone calls me up and says, I've got a problem. So I don't deal with, you know, it's not my field of expertise to how to effectuate change in Congress.
Okay. Here's another question. How would the Chinese American scientific research community become more active and involved in getting the voices heard? Fundamental issue is U.S.-China relationship, how to push for improvement.
That's what you.
Yeah.
Oh, well, let's see. I think if there's something you have something to say about, maybe join writing a letter with colleagues at your university in particular. And that's something we have some experience with, my colleagues at Stanford. And I think sort of that grassroots effort, and explain why what the government might be doing is harmful. Not just I'm opposed to it, but explain why, what the consequences are. And I think if multiple institutions and communities do that, this is the impact on us. Those stories, I think, bring a lot of, have an impact in Congress. I don't know what else you do. We're a democracy. You're supposed to talk to your representatives. You should let them know this is what's wrong, how it affects my community.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. And I think, but this should not be whether you're Chinese American or whatever your origin is. As you said earlier, many of us, even, I thought about it when you said it. I'm the grandchild of immigrants. This country was built on immigration, and we should never forget that. But I think Congress needs to be reminded of that.
Yeah, I wanted to say one thing. I think we need to educate Congress in what is this theft. Your first 10 minutes of, I learned so much there, and I was in this track to diplomacy. We needed you there, and because I don't think that we I don't think that we made that differential between what was theft and, what is, academic freedom and publication. And
Collaboration.
so I think that, we need to get you out of your pinhole. That was very, very useful, and, I think that story needs to be told.
Okay, I know my colleague Dennis will want to ask this question, and I have the same question to you all. The narrative against China, or the narrative describing China is so strong in both Congress, both aisles of the Congress, and also the media. How do we reach the middle class American so that they can understand that this U.S.-China, I will call it pissing contest, is not going to help us? Any wisdom there?
I mean, you asked me one question that I put off talking about, which is, what do I think about the future of Chinese economy and where it's going? I went to, I went to school in the '80s, and that was when Japan was going to overcome us, right? That was our right? And I remember, I forget what year it was, is the Japanese bought the Chrysler Building in New York City, and my mother cried. And I'd say, Mom, what are they going to do? Take the building back to Tokyo? And I think China is headed, I think as the Chinese economy, I think it's going to have, unless something really fundamental happens, that we've hit a peak, and I think that we're going to be wanting to maintain this relationship with China instead of trying to push them under, and we could play a big role in that. That's really hard to teach Congress. It's really hard to teach the middle class Americans about this, and so I think that, but we have to try it.
Okay, this is a big question. A major growth in AI and medical technology, particularly in consumer device. Does international research cooperation advance this, or in particularly in China, should they cooperate in AI? Because AI is one field that is separating us as potentially separating us. And
Cooperate on things like medicine, where, as opposed to weapons, cooperate on medicine in areas where cooperation makes a critical difference.
Yeah, unfortunately, those distinctions are kind of lost on the government. So
question?
they,
Could
when you say weapons, obviously that's a problem. But they will look at somebody who works in a computer engineering, and it'll be some field which is an application for lasers, and they'll say, well, those lasers could be somehow, this is fundamental research, but somehow that you're working on a laser that to them is a weapon. So, and NIH, talk about medicine. NIH is probably the most aggressive agency, granting agency that, in terms of cracking down on researchers. And, it's preposterous because these are clients who are dealing with anti-cancer medications or working on Alzheimer's disease. And you're like, what are you talking about? What are you worried about? And so the reason and rationale have sort of left the room.
There were over, I forget what it was, 150 to 200 visiting scientists from China in the School of Medicine at Stanford in 2016, 2017, 2018. Today, there's a handful. And it's not only because they can't get a visa, it's because the scientists inside the School of Medicine are worried that they'll be collaborating, and they're working on cancer, and they're working, I know, it's just, you just can't, it's very hard to understand. And I agree, I mean, I think that's why we need to define that fence, right? And it's a hard thing to do, but that's what we need to do.
Educating the politicians here.
We have a question from, would you introduce yourself and ask the question, Mayor? Yeah.
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Marilyn Liebers. I am Mayor Pro Tem for the City of Morgan Hill. Hi, Mike. But my day job is I am President, CEO of an organization, nonprofit, called China Silicon Valley, based in Palo Alto. So I'm going to give you a little background. I actually do have a question, but you get the background first. So educating the politicians, someone back here said that, is kind of our goal. We take groups of elected mayors and vice mayors to China on a regular basis. Between 2014 and 2019, right before the pandemic hit, I was in China 37 times with groups. So I can talk about China. I've been all over, okay? I love the fact that you're going into rural China and helping the children. I love it. I've been in cities where the streets aren't paved. So it's there in China. So I just made my 38th trip to China. I was in Chongqing in June. So very progressive city. So I think, yes, we are trying to educate local politicians on how important our relationships are with China. And the only way we can do it is to open their eyes. We take them there. You see the hospitality. You see the people in China. They're a loving country, I feel, and I am very pro-China. So many years ago, I'm talking like maybe even 15 years ago, I was at a conference with Zoe Laughlin, if you're all familiar with her, if you're local, okay. She, at that time, from the stage, suggested that anyone who earns a PhD, no matter what country you're from, would automatically get a green card. And I think she still supports that today. If you have any contact with her, I think it's important that you remind her that she suggested that. So anyway, okay, now the question. Hopefully you know a little bit more about me. This is for our Stanford professor. And you said, no, who's Stanford? I thought you were Berkeley. Boo to both of you, I'm USC, so. Fight on. Anyway, gentleman on the end. You said that you talked about how many researchers you had, a few years ago, and now you're down to like 5. That was in just a medical facility. And now in your actual physics, correct? Do you think some of this has to do with the patent laws? And could you explain that a little bit to me? Because I have taken a class on patent laws between the two countries. And it was my understanding that if you, let's say, use the word invent something, okay, the university gets credit. In China, the individual and the university gets credit. Do you know anything about that that could help clarify for me? Is the patent laws unfair here in the US compared to China? That's my question. Thank you, folks.
I'm not an expert on patent law. For years, I've led a very large international collaboration. Some of my collaborators at Stanford, along the way to developing new instrumentation, would say, "Oh, we ought to patent this," and I said, "No, let's just do it and move on." So my understanding is very limited. However, I know at Stanford, generally when a patent, if it's for work you did at Stanford, the university definitely has some role in that, and it's typically shared. but the legal details, I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. There's a lawyer over here. Maybe he knows about patent law.
I have partners who are patent lawyers, but I know that in the U.S., if you, as Peter was saying, you'll get a patent and then you get a license so that you can, the university will get a credit too. In China, it is very different, and the difference is such that, well, we do have a lawyer here from patent, a Chinese lawyer.
I don't know if you want to bore the audience with that. I can answer the question to you after this. So, yeah, I know all the details. Sorry.
Okay,
There is not that much difference. No.
okay.
I just want to know if you think less Chinese are coming because they feel restricted by our patent laws.
No.
I don't think so, no. I think it's just fear of coming here.
I will say that a lot of U.S. researchers and scientists get in a lot of trouble because in China, they will be put on patents without their knowledge. And that will be uncovered. And they're accused and and they're like, hey, look, no one even told me they were putting me on this. I wasn't involved. They're doing it as a courtesy, as a favor, what have you. And it can make a huge problem for them.
I can add something to that. Just, if you give a talk in China, someone like me, at a university, they might actually give you an honorary professorship, but you might not even know it. And then when somebody over here discovers that, they say, well, why didn't you report that? And, it's that sort of thing. It's perfectly innocent. on
It's a
behalf of-
cultural thing, isn't it?
Yeah, but, so that's,
Those 37 times that I was in China were not all with politicians. I was on a speaker circuit, so I wonder how many I have that I don't even know about. But it's kind of funny, actually. And I just want to add one more thing. The last two speeches I gave in China, it was right in December of 19, right before the pandemic, was on the future of AI. And they were just gobbling that up. They were so interested. When I go back on that speaker circuit, I'm going to be, how do we hold back AI? Thank you.
Yeah, are there any more questions from the audience? Please.
I'm Eric Tao.
Can we all hear him?
I don't think we're related, not in the last 3 generations. I am about to go to China and give talks. And I'm academic. I do mentor a lot of young professors. Some of them, like Franklin, are from China. So I want to ask a very down-to-earth question. How do we advise them if they got an invitation from China? Should they be fearless, go and do your scientific research? Or they should say, let's hold it off until something happens?
Well, I like to encourage my people to what I tell my clients, and they don't necessarily take this advice. They're just turn down every opportunity to do anything because they're afraid. My view is, look, as long as you're completely transparent with your university, you put emails out to your dean and the chair of your department, and everybody is aware of everything that you're doing at all times, then, I'm not worried as a lawyer that you'll have any difficulty. But, a lot of people are very risk averse, and they're like, why take the risk? Why take the chance? I don't want to have to answer questions. So they just forego.
This one.
If I may add, just don't talk politics. Don't talk any politics. U.S. politics, China politics, Hong Kong politics, don't talk any politics, just talk science. First of all,
Okay, that's another,
I just need to add to
Okay.
Peter's comment.
you on the mic?
Yes.
yes, please.
My additional advice to Peter is if you are going to give a technical talk, and if you worry about IP, you give a summary to your colleagues in your department or even your tech transfer office of your university, says, this is what I'm going to talk about. And it's transparency. I'm fully transparent. Therefore, you have nothing to worry about. And if you should get any money, because they give you honorarium, for example, for giving a lecture, report it. And then you are home free. I believe, with Peter's help, if you need.
Yeah, let me, can I just say something on this? Just so you know now I'm a social scientist, so we don't have a lot of the same risks that some of these, but I was given 18 invitations to give talks from October 25th to Thanksgiving, because on the China side, they are just dying for interaction with American, European scholars. And they want to know what's happening in the world. They want to know what you're doing. Behind closed doors, they'll tell you what they're thinking. But there is this other thing that you're helping them. You're reaching needs that they have. You got to be careful. I mean, you don't need to worry about that with rural babies. But Mike, I have other colleagues that do go as engineers and as scientists, and they're very careful. But their colleagues in China are so happy when they're there. So
You're treated like a rock star.
you are. Yep.
All right. Yeah. First of all, hey Joe, thank you so much with the two Peters and Scott. I love the comments and all the things you said. So very important work. Thank you very much for this great panel. But I also want to 2 points actually. The first point is, Professor Tao and and your wife. I'm really saddened, to hear what happened. But obviously, unfortunately, under the program, there's a lot of people that actually have gone through those sufferings and challenges. And echoing Congressman Mike Honda has said, don't let those people win. Persist and fight on. Right? I think there's actually also historical injustices that have happened in this country. Right? And people actually have been killed and, for those reasons. So I think my point is, continue on the fight, right? Don't let, injustices happen and fight on that front. So I think on that note, I'm really, really encouraged that you obviously have a very supportive family. I've actually seen your kids. I think how they are fight on and very strong. Right, with the situation. So I think, on that front, you have a great wife and very supportive family. So continue that fight and continue to fight on. No, actually, Peter, I wanted to want you to comment on, because you made a point at the very beginning that the Department of Justice shouldn't give quotas, right? And whoever did that, was it sort of like the Secretary of Justice, or whatever, maybe the assistant. So I guess the question is, why did they make the mistake to do this kind of quota thing to begin with? And then secondly, really obviously, those people make mistakes. Those are decision makers that make mistakes. How do we actually hold those people accountable for their actions? That's my first question. Right. The second question on that note is, how do we, in general, because obviously a lot of Professor Tao and many other people have actually have these injustices that happen. Let's say focus on China Initiative. How do we, in general, right, educate and deal with, especially the Department of Justice, right? Because they are actually just following the orders, perhaps they are politicians, but ultimately, how do you educate folks at Department of Justice, for instance?
The best way to educate them is to beat them. And they don't like to lose.
Right.
And no, that's why the China Initiative has been scaled back as much as it has, and it has been. My phone doesn't ring nearly as often as it was, 4 years ago, 3 years ago. There's been a big difference, and the reason is because they keep losing these cases. Why do they make these mistakes? I tell you, because there was a motive. They were highly motivated to bring criminal cases against these researchers, and the tools that they were using, they were trying to force a square peg into a round hole, and the laws didn't fit what they were doing. Those were not, we were able to eventually either persuade them not to bring the case, or when they brought in the case, get the judge to dismiss them. So that's how you educate them. And, you know, before Franklin's case, we had a meeting with very high officials at the Department of Justice and explained why they were going to lose that case. And they said, you know, they plunged ahead.
So, in other words, you give us a very good idea. Maybe we actually get a whole bunch of lawyers who actually won the cases against the Department of Justice, and then could then together put a panel. Ken, that's the next project, by the way, Ken. That may be something to think about, okay?
Real quick question. The DOJ, they're driven by some authority. It's not the DOJ itself. So is it the executive branch? Is there a law on the books that allows them to pursue this, like the Enemy Alien Act of 1798? Is there something that provides that authority for them to behave this way?
The Attorney General sets the agenda, and the Attorney General at the time was Jeff Sessions, and he's the one who announced the China Initiative, and Merrick Garland was one who, you know, scaled it back. So, you know, where that comes from, I mean, it ultimately comes from the president and the priorities of the administration. You can imagine what a Trump administration will be doing as far as the China Initiative is.
Are there CEOs of manufacturing of technology in our country that pushes them?
No, you know, that I don't know. I think it's very, being anti-China, being seen as, you know, being aggressive on China is a very popular position in this country politically. It's bipartisan, you know. I mean, I think it's worse on one side than the other, but it's not it's a very easy thing to do for a politician.
The China initiative may not be pushed by any industrial leaders, but some of the pending legislations that are pending, like the Biosecure Act, we know, I'm with a biotech company, that some of the industrial players are behind those initiatives.
Right.
So,
Okay. One last question from this lovely lady.
Well, I better ask a good question then, if it's the last one. My name is Odessa. I've actually been to China and, as part of a group traveling to learn and build relationships. Diana and I travel together. One part is correct by beating them as a lawyer, and we're very grateful that you're here to protect families who don't deserve to be treated this way in our country. The other part, it seems like we're not winning the PR war, where we should be educating on positive relationships, positive research, positive collaborative scientific papers and work that we have done to advance humanity and science and engineering or any other aspect. And I think those are the stories that are missing in the media. Those are the stories that are missing in our society, because we hear the bad stories, but we don't hear the great stories. I know when I have gone to China, wanted to go to China, people around me would say, like, why are you going to China? Because they see it as a negative thing. And to me, it has been nothing but positive. So maybe one thing we should do with your organization and other organizations with scientists, and of course the legal system, to bring about examples and bring them to the forefront in order to build a relationship and really showcase that this is really an unfortunate and horrible thing that our country has done, but there are so many other relationships that have been so good, and it's going to help families like them.
Is that, okay.
Agree.
All right, we want to keep this program to an hour and a half, and we're right on schedule. So we're coming to the closing remarks. I'm going to ask Peter Z, and then Scott, and then Peter M, myself, and then Ken Fong to do a closing remark on the whole seminar.
Well, all I can say is that the toll this has taken, both on the individual level, has been immense. As you know, I see it with clients like Franklin, and Franklin won his case. And you can still see the toll that it took on the family. And, you know, he is by no means alone. There's been dozens of clients of mine in the same situation who call me up, and they are absolutely sleepless and worried and fearful. And, you know, and then the ripple effects of that trail out and actually damage the United States. And I actually, it does bother me just as a citizen, because these clients of mine, I mean, it's so unbelievably impressive, their accomplishments. They are so highly accomplished and so successful in their fields. And the idea that they're being cut off from funding and having to leave the United States, it's heartbreaking. You know, as an American, I'm like, what are we doing? We're just shooting ourselves in the foot. So it's very distressing and upsetting to see. So hopefully that will come to an end.
I'm going to end with the 5 different Chinas that I've worked in. In the 1980s, I do field work and go to rural areas, and the China I went to, you know, hundreds of kids would come around me, this American, and they'd touch my hair on my arms, and I'd stare at who inside their home and who were they, this discovering each other. And then it was the 1990s. I was a young professor at Stanford. I went over and taught them how to do field work and how to do research and how to find problems and solve them. And then the 2000s, it was this joint effort. We did it together. And they pulled me along like I pulled them along. And then we hit the 2010s when I was trailing them. They were coming up with the solutions and with the writing the papers that changed not only China, but the entire world. And now we can't go. It's, you know, I can go because I have 22 former students who are professors in remote areas, and but that this collaboration that has solved world problems, and this is economics, and this isn't physics or quantum or electrical engineering, and that those problems, that those 5 Chinas have existed for them too. I think we need to get back to where we are working together and solving the world problem. That's where, and there's a long ways to go, but I think we need to do it and try.
Well, I agree with that. I think, as a scientist, I think the scientific community has to do more outreach to the public in general about the importance of science. And, you know, science isn't good or bad. It is just seeking scientific truth. Technology is not good or bad, depending on how you use it. And I don't think that's fully understood. But we have so many challenges on this planet that we all live on that I see the major challenges in the social sciences. Science and technology will offer many technical solutions going forward, but we really have to learn how to socially interact and explain what we're doing and why it's important. And I think that's a huge community effort. And as I said earlier, most of my colleagues rather just be in the lab working. Well, that's good, but we also have to take some time to educate more people.
It's been my pleasure to serve as moderator of these 3 distinguished gentlemen. They are all generally interested in making a better world, and I hope their speeches and dialogue will give us food for thought. As I always say, the U.S. defeated Russia, and the U.S. defeated Japan. And they are trying to use the same formula towards China. However, the Chinese economy is going to be bigger than the United States, whether we like it or not. For one, they have 4 times the people. And if they only come up to half the standard of us, they're already twice as big. So we cannot compete on quantity. We have to compete on quality. And our quality is bringing the best and the brightest to our country. And this has benefited America for many, many years. And we're basically shooting ourselves in the foot by doing that, okay?